So I am like more than pumped to see you guys all on this call. It makes me really excited. It makes my Enneagram 2 wing 4 in growth and all my romantic happy feelings just kind of explode. I feel like, I don't know, I get all these feel goods from being able to do something for you, for me, that's within my strength zone. So what I'm trying to say is living within my value feels real good. And I'm excited to be able to do it with you. I've been studying ACT, and it's not ACT, it's ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, for years now, since I was in graduate school back in 2012. And then I've taken several other courses since then in my social work practice. And I see how applicable it is to this business and obviously to life. And so I'm really excited. I've never actually read The Happiness Trap. I've always stuck to more therapeutic type books that talk about ACT, like how to use it in actual therapy. So I'm really glad that this one is for everybody. It makes sense. But Ryan can speak to the fact that it does still feel a little jargony. It feels a little therapy-like at times. But I hope that doesn't lose you. Also, I would like to say, if you have not watched the recording that I made a couple days ago, it's like 45 minutes-ish, I would really encourage you. You can stay on the call, obviously, don't leave if you haven't seen it, but I really encourage you to go back and watch that if you haven't, because I go over the introduction of the book and chapters 1 and 2, and those are, I feel like, integral to understanding what the happiness trap is, how we set ourselves up for failure in putting ourselves in that happiness trap. And so I would love it if you would watch that. And also it kind of outlined those assignments that I was talking about. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Ryan and I we took some of our thoughts from reading through these first few chapters, and we want to share a little bit with you. So like I said, we went over introduction and 1 and 2 just because we don't have time to give that as much justice as we would really like. So we are diving into chapter 3 through 6 tonight, and then we're going to break that up for the other calls, and we'll let you know that after the call, kind of what our plan is. So I wanted to start first, just right off the bat, with chapter 3. The 6 core principles of ACT, it's interesting because if you are an Enneagram person, the hexaflex is what they call it. It's this like funny triangle looking thing in a circle, very similar to what the Enneagram looks like. And they have 6 core principles that surround that hexaflex. And they are diffusion, expansion, connection, the observing self, values, and committed action. And reading through those, we're obviously going to get in much deeper with those as we go along throughout the study. So if you feel lost by hearing what those are at the beginning, don't worry. We're going to get into that pretty deep. But I want to give you kind of a brief understanding and some of the ways that's helped me understand it better. So we'll start with diffusion. So diffusion simply is giving space, giving distance from our thoughts. And there was some diffusion stuff that we're going to talk about from the chapters that we read, ways to try to diffuse from the thoughts that we have. Diffusion means giving distance. Also, diffusion means seeing thoughts as they actually are, ongoing attempts at meaning making of the thoughts that are going through our head, and then choosing to give them power only if they are genuinely serving us, only if they're genuinely serving us and helping us move toward a value-driven life. So there's many different ways that we can diffuse from our thoughts, and sometimes it's simply just acknowledging that we're having a thought and that we are not our thoughts. The second one is expansion. Expansion is just a fancy word for welcoming. Welcoming the thoughts, letting the thoughts be there, thoughts, emotions, feelings that we have, just letting them exist. And connection. I look at connection as being here now. often we go through our entire days and we are not even aware of the sensations we're having in our body. We're not aware of the million thoughts that are shooting through our head constantly. And so connecting with ourselves and the thoughts that are going through our head allow us to have more control. I'm going to mute some more people really quick. Okay. Then the observing self. This one was the hardest one for me to wrap my brain around when I was first introduced to ACT. I was like, that sounds really wonky and kind of out there, but I want to share with you ways that connected with me to think about it. So the observing self is the part of you that is watching your life happen. It's the part of you that has been with you since the moment you were born. Like, you've had the observing self yourself from the moment you were born, probably even the moment you were conceived. You had this part of you that's always been there. And that part of you has nothing to do with thinking, has nothing to do with emotions. You didn't have those when you were born, right? We didn't have all this drama and goals and, failures and thoughts about ourselves. We didn't have any of that. But there was a part of us that was always there. To me, I look at the observing self as my soul, the core of who I am. And when I can really quiet myself and I can quiet the thinking side of my brain and really connect with my soul, with who I am, the part that's always been with me and always will be, that isn't attacking me, right? When I can get to that place, I'm able to have so much peace. I kind of think of those moments as God moments. But I really, to me, those God moments of separating myself are kind of few and far between. And I think it's because I'm not paying enough attention. I'm not giving myself that connection that I really need to be able to get there. So the observing self is interesting to me, but I really like it. And it's hard for us to comprehend this second part of ourselves because we have literally no word in our language to describe the observing self. We have no definition for it. So of course we have a hard time understanding it. In other countries, they kind of get the idea and the concept, but we're kind of lost trying to fill in a word that kind of makes sense and kind of fits. Okay, sorry. The next one are values. We talk about values a lot, and I think it's kind of a good thing that in Plexus we're always thinking about our why and what drives us and what makes us get up every morning. So values are values. You guys know what values are. They're norms. They're things that we hold dear in our lives, and we want to try to connect with those more in order to live a life that is super fulfilling to us. And then committed action, I look at that as just staying in our strength zone. Committed action is staying within your values and moving forward. And it's not just any action. It's effective action towards your values. So those are kind of my thoughts about those first, the 6 core principles of ACT. And something I think that if you took anything away from the first chapter that we're going to go over tonight is psychological flexibility. We are attempting throughout this entire book to go from a place of rigidity and controlling and trying to remove or change our thoughts and all that kind of stuff. We're moving from that inflexibility to psychological flexibility. That is the ability to adapt to a situation with awareness, with openness and focus, and to take effective action guided by our values. That's what this whole book is about, is moving us from inflexibility to flexibility. And it's interesting to me that it's a relatively new therapy. It's a relatively new idea, but it's been practiced for a very long time. And it's interesting now that there are many books, TED Talks starting to come out about how IQ isn't as important now. It's about being flexible. It's about our emotional intelligence. It's about our ability to be flexible and adjustable. And this is what this therapy is about, how to be flexible. The emotional quotient, and then there's a new one. I just saw a TED Talk about it, and I'm like, you guys are just recreating the wheel. We got to get to some ACT, because this is exactly what they're trying to say. Okay. So, you will not change your life simply by reading this book. That's why I gave you those assignments from the first couple chapters, because this is not a book you can just read, go, oh, that's neat, and then put it down and go about your life. These are things you have to like put into practice and actually think about in order for it to really make a difference in your life. And that sounds pretty common sense, but we take in so much information every day, and it's like, okay, stored, and then we go on to the next thing. This is something you really have to put into practice in order for it to really work or click or be useful. So I think that's good. Ryan, did you want to say anything about that? Or
Sure, yeah. Okay, so I had a lot of the same notes written down that you did. I'm just gonna touch on them twice because maybe repetition will be helpful and hearing it out of different words. So just like a note to y'all, like this is Sunny's area of expertise. I mean, she has a degree in this. This is her love and her passion. I came into this, now anybody that knows me knows that I am a personal development book hoarder, and I don't just hoard them, I actually read them. I read massive amounts of self-development books. And when I got this book, I picked it up and I think I read the first page and I put it down and I was like, well, I don't have to read that right now. And out of avoidance, I picked up a different book and read that entire book in one day, just to avoid reading this one. And then I picked it up and I think I read like, a second page. And I was like, I don't have to read that yet. And I picked up a second book. Like I read other things to avoid reading this one because it is so massively different than I've read, I would say close to 100, maybe not 100, but close. I've read a lot of personal development books, and this was just, and it's all like reprogramming my brain. Negative thoughts are coming in. I will reprogram that, put a positive spin on it, and make the negative disappear, and I'll welcome in the happy. And this is so much about, it says in there that 80% of our thoughts have some degree of negative content. So we are like, I don't know what chapter, did you just do chapter 3 just then?
Oh, yeah, it was just some of my highlights from 3. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I'm getting ahead of you then.
No, go ahead. We can bop around.
Okay. Well, since 80% of our thoughts are negative, or have some negative content, it like all day long we are talking to ourselves. Like I know I'm not the only one that's talking to myself in my head. We tell ourselves these stories, and I don't know if y'all are like me, but I am the master at creating a story in my mind of stuff that's happened. For instance, I'm just thinking about my events today. I like my children to look amazing. Like first day of school pictures, and then the shoes I had planned for my youngest did not fit. Like all these things happened. The shoes I ended up putting on, like it's a long story. He didn't look right, and I'm creating this scenario in my head. People are going to think that we're poor. Because like the buckle was broken, y'all, on the pair of shoes I sent my kid to school on his first day of school. The buckle's totally broken. They're 2 sizes too large because they're his brother's shoes. I mean, like all of this stuff, and I made up all this whole scenario in my head about stuff, which is completely ridiculous because you know what? No one paid any attention to my kids' shoes today. They didn't even show up in the pictures because it was pouring down rain when I took the pictures. I cropped the shoes out on accident. But that's just one small thing. But how many times have you created a scenario in your head when it comes to, like, I don't know, people you work with, or like a situation with a friend, or even like with your parent, like, and you create like this is probably what they're thinking. This is probably what they're going to do. Like, it's literally all made up. Like, it's not fact. It's not true. But and that's where the anxiety comes in. And I'm sure Sunny will touch on this when she talks about other stuff, but like, even like naming our anxiety. Daniel and I were talking about this before I got on the call. I was like, honey, what should I call my anxiety? My husband's anxiety's name is Dave. And when Dave shows up, it's like, Dave, is that you talking? Because it's not really Daniel talking, it's Dave talking, his anxiety. And so Daniel, he was like, honey, I think you have to be the one to name your anxiety. But I'm telling y'all that because seriously, think about that. It says that, the first part of self-awareness, like the first step in all of this is self-awareness, becoming self-aware. And so when you catch yourself, which it takes practice, when you catch yourself creating this scenario in your head or, saying those little negative things, just catching yourself and being like, Tina, is that you? Is that you talking, Tina? Instead of saying no and like trying to tell yourself something positive or put the negative thought out of your head, this is just saying, accept it. Just say, I hear you, Tina. Thanks for the info, and move on. And it makes what it has done for me. It has made it so much easier for that story that I create in my head to stop a lot faster. Therefore, my anxiety, or Tina, doesn't just keep showing up, and because I've acknowledged what she's saying, what I'm saying, and I'm able to thank my mind for it and kind of move on. So the anxiety and that, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't roll over and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and grow into this huge, huge story. That's not real at all. So I think about that. You might think about naming your anxiety, because that's even something Sunny and I talked about. I'm like, oh, that's so funny, because she was talking about a name for anxiety, and I was like, oh, my husband has a name for his anxiety too. I was like, and I thought, I need to do that, because my anxiety looks totally different than Daniel's, but I still have it big time. Big time. Okay, let's see. The other question is this thought helpful? Because sometimes I feel like a lot of my negative thoughts in my mind were just so negative, so negative, so negative. But if I really did listen to those negative thoughts, I might be able to even find a helpful spin. For instance, with my taxes, I'm super negative about my taxes. I'm super negative about everything that has to do with taxes. Is by far, I think, one of my biggest stressors. But if I really listen to that, I'm like, what can be helpful out of this? Well, the helpful thing would be recognize where I'm at. This is what I'm doing right now, and this is what I can do later. So maybe this stress isn't as bad. And everything else that's not helpful about my taxes, I can just say, thanks, Tina. Registered that information, and I'm accepting it. Okay, that's good for now. That's a good stopping point for me.
Okay. So I have so many thoughts, like just firing all the time. And I wish I could like write them down, because I'm like, yes, Ryan, she's getting it. It makes me so happy that she's getting it.
I'm getting it.
She was avoiding it for so long, and now she's getting it. Okay. So I need you to hear me say, your thoughts have no ability to harm you. No ability to harm you at all. We take those thoughts and harm ourselves by trying to control them, by trying to shut them down, by trying to change them, by trying to prove them right or wrong, by trying to overanalyze them and see if that thought is right. The book points out that no matter whether you think a thought is right or wrong, you will find evidence for whether you think the thought is right or whether you think the thought is wrong. And we create these traps that we put ourselves in, that if we find evidence, we think ourselves to evidence that the thought is right, and it's a self-defeating thought, we're truly going to limit ourselves and stop living within our values. I am 100% an example of this. I talked about this in the video that I did, the intro video, but I have serious thoughts about not being a good leader. Now, I have options about that. I could say, no, I'm a good leader, and I could write affirmations down, and I could repeat them to myself every single day, and my brain is still going to say, you're not a good leader. It's going to find evidence. If I believe that I'm not a good leader, my brain is going to find evidence to show me that I am not. Okay? And so it doesn't help me if I have a really defeating thought to just try to affirm the mess out of it. Okay? Affirmations, studies show now, affirmations work for some people really, really well. Like if you legitimately have evidence in your life and you have people speaking these truths over you and you know that they're true, but you sometimes have thoughts that they're not, that's when affirmations work. But if you have a truly self-defeating thought and you have placed evidence that says it is bad and that you are not that thing, they actually don't help. So it actually helps to allow ourselves to think through our thoughts. So I follow hashtag acceptance and commitment therapy on Instagram. And there was this really beautiful graphic that, so the process of accepting difficult feelings. So noticing the feeling is first, then describing the feeling is second, then allowing the feeling to be there, and then accepting. Going through that thought, okay? And sometimes it's helpful to see where maybe that thought you're having is kind of true and examining that and seeing if it's true because you're not living within your value. For me, there were times when I legitimately wasn't the best leader that I possibly could be because I was not living within my values, because I was trying to control all the anxious feelings that I was having when I tried to show up to be the leader that I knew I could be. So sometimes it helps to think through, because some of our thoughts are helpful for us. Some of those negative thoughts can be helpful, but we've got to work through it to determine if they really are or not. Also, the naming your anxiety or naming that is, my sister actually was talking to me the other day, and she's like, I was having some anxiety and fear about something that happened to me last week. And my sister was like, okay, you got to name it. She's like, my anxiety is Barbara, and she wears bad denim floral dresses with puffy sleeves straight out of the 80s, and she talks in this whiny voice, and Barbara is a jerk. And I died laughing because she's hilarious, but that's what works for her. And so, like, when you look through some of these diffusion tactics in the book, like saying the thoughts that you have, singing them to the tune of Happy Birthday, or pretending that they have Mickey Mouse voice, or whatever works for you. Sometimes that doesn't work for people, and that's fine. But if naming your anxiety works for you, use that. The whole point of it is just to not take your thoughts so darn seriously. They have no power to harm you whatsoever, and you have the choice whether you believe them or not. And whether you acknowledge them or not, because our brains ultimately are there trying to protect us. So sometimes you just say, thank you, brain. I know you're just doing your job. You're trying to protect me from the saber-toothed tiger of my emotions, right? You're trying to save me. My caveman brain is doing its job, trying to protect me, keep me within a group, keep me alive. But our thoughts have no ability to harm us like a saber-toothed tiger did back in the caveman days, okay? But our brains still react like that they do. So that is what diffusion looks like. It's just giving yourself distance, realizing the thought is truly just the thought, and not taking ourselves quite so seriously. So I wrote down a few things that I've literally so many notes. We could be here for 3 hours, but you guys don't want that, do you? Okay. I also really like the tactic of saying, I'm having the thought that. I love Brene Brown. Her work kind of fits really well in with ACT and mindfulness. They're very, very similar, and I think that's why I love her so much. But she says, I'm creating a story, and I'm creating this story. It's the same thing as saying, I'm having the thought that this is going to happen. And sometimes just acknowledging that it's there allows you to move forward. So that's a good diffusion tactic. Also, testing your thoughts. It's on page 47. I think that these are really good ways. These are good questions to ask yourself. So the thoughts that criticize you, insult you, judge you, put you down, or blame you are likely to lower your motivation rather than to increase it. So when troublesome thoughts pop into your head, it may be useful to ask yourself one or more of the following questions. Is this an old thought? Have I heard this one before? Do I gain anything useful from listening to it again? How many of us have fought the same battles over and over and over again in our lives, and we're like, dang it, God, I thought I already learned this lesson. You're doing it all over again. Those are our thoughts popping back up, and we're not paying attention. Okay, so does this thought help me take effective action to improve my life? What would I get for buying into this thought? Sometimes just asking yourself, you're like, well, that would take me down this path and this path. And you're like, well, that's dumb. I don't want to do that. And then you move on. But instead, we play tug of war with our thoughts and emotions all the time. Okay, so I don't know if they eventually give the tug of war example in this book, but I'm going to give you the tug of war example. Okay, so I want you to imagine that it is you holding onto one side of the rope, and somebody else is, and your thought, your angry emotion, your feeling is on the other end of this rope. And when you are trying not to have that thought, emotion, feeling, or you're trying to prove it right or wrong, or trying to find evidence of it, you are attached to it. And you are wasting your precious time tugging away at that from both sides, pulling, tugging. There's this huge pit in the middle too. And so you're trying to avoid the pit, right? Sometimes we allow those negative thoughts and feelings to pull us into the pit, like straight into the pit. And other times we're just still struggling. We're still dealing with it every day. It's popping up in our minds, and we are getting, in the meantime, thoroughly exhausted, working and pulling and tugging away, trying to prove, disprove. And the truth is, this is where ACT makes sense to me the most. We have the choice to just drop the rope. We have the choice to just let that fear, that anxiety, that emotion just sit there. We don't have to fight with it all the time. We can just acknowledge that it's there, and we can keep doing the things that we know we need to do in our lives. Or we can sit on the couch with a bag of Doritos, binging on Netflix, trying to avoid that thought that we're having, that we're constantly tugging away at, right? So sometimes our solutions to our problems wind up being the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, Sunny. And
Yes.
don't you think that that's a super important thing for us to do, like a check with ourselves and say, like, what are we avoiding? Mm-hmm. And figure out why. Mm-hmm. Because if we can recognize what we are avoiding, then there's always something. What we're avoiding isn't actually what we're avoiding. There's some sort of meaning or feeling attached to it. Mm-hmm. So it's like when we can, that's all about the self-awareness. When you can really be self-aware and know why, like, I avoid doing my taxes because I feel stupid when I do them. That is the meaning that I have attached to doing my taxes. I don't like to feel stupid. So I'll binge on Netflix all day long before I'll sit in my office and feel stupid. And so it's the meaning I've attached to doing my taxes is that, and writing a big fat check to the government. But that also I feel stupid. I didn't save enough money for the taxes. So you know what I'm saying? It's all the same. So recognizing, like, that's where I have that in my notes, weekly check-ins, like on where you're at. Preston, my life coach, had made me do that every week. It was a check-in. This is where I'm at right now. No judgment. It was judgment-free. You're not eating the way you should? Okay. You didn't work out? You're not working out? Okay. You know, you didn't do X, Y, and Z? Okay. All of it is okay. Judgment-free. Recognizing where you're at helps you move forward. Let's see, hold on, I wrote it down. I wrote down, this is perfect for control freaks. Mm-hmm. It says, accept the reality of your situation as it is here and now. The more effectively you can take action to change it. That's on page 59. That was like so helpful for me, because for a while there, for me, when I was reading this, I was like, I'm going to have to listen to Mickey Mouse tell me I'm stupid all day long, and this is going to work. And I was feeling very out of control, because I was like, I already hear that I'm stupid for myself, and now Mickey Mouse is telling me, and now I'm singing it in the birthday song. I was like, and I sent Sunny this message before I read chapter 6. I was like, Sunny, I'm not doing well. I was like, I'm trying to go through the steps for the people because it's the right thing to do, but Mickey Mouse is telling me I'm stupid and I don't like it. And then I read chapter 6 and I like calmed down a little bit, because I felt like I had a little bit more control, because I was like, okay, it's kind of like what Preston does with me. Recognize where you're at. Because if you cannot recognize where you're at and just accept it, no judgment, quit judging yourself. Okay, that is where I am at. Now I can move on.
So that cracks me up. And I just had like a pregnancy hormonal hot flash just then, laughing. Like my face got all flush and I'm over here sweating. But it was hilarious to me when she messaged me that. Because I also have some of those same feelings of like, Mickey Mouse is weird. That's like a weird, or like, anyway. But it's funny that you bring that up, because when I first met my husband, my now husband, he wasn't my husband, he's a 1 on the Enneagram. And so it was really hard for him, because I would often say to him, Russell, it is what it is. This is where we are. This is what we've got. You don't like it, but that's not going to change it. Like, we don't want to be fearful. We don't want to be anxious, but not wanting it to be there isn't going to make it go away. So sometimes it just is what it is. Yes, I'm afraid when I reach out to people on Facebook. I am shaking in my boots when I reach out to the person that is a huge influencer, and I boldly tell them what I know works for me. Yes, I have thoughts in my head running constantly about what those stories. I'm having the thought that they're going to look at me this way. I'm having the thought that they've already done the research and chosen they didn't want to. I'm having these thoughts that. And it is what it is. I can still choose to take committed action toward my value of helping them, whether they want to be helped or not. I can't control their answer to me, but I can control what I choose to do. So that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay.
Sorry, I know I kind of interrupted you, but I was
No. I think you're good.
That's so right.
Oh, yes. Okay. Your thoughts are just as automatic as sneezing. As closing your eyes when you sneeze. You can't control that. You close your eyes every time you sneeze. I dare you to try not to. You cannot control how your thoughts are coming in or out, or when they leave or when they go. You cannot control that. So stop trying. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So the not taking yourself too seriously, thinking your mind, silly voice techniques, all of that stuff. The summary of all of that is this. The aim of diffusion is not to get rid of unpleasant thoughts, but rather to see them for what they are, just words. They are like ink on paper. It really means nothing. They're just thoughts. They're just words going through your head. They have no power over you. Okay, we are so trained to try to make them go away, and that doesn't work. Don't expect these techniques to make you feel good. This one's hard for me because especially pain, like think about in our physical bodies, when we feel pain, we take Advil and make it go away. When we feel physical pain, if we have a broken bone, we go to the doctor, they fix it, we feel better. Problem, solution. The problem with that is that it doesn't work the same in our brains as it does in our physical body, okay? So we try to apply what works. My whole life it's worked for me to find pain and make it go away. So we try that over and over and over again with our mental selves, and it doesn't work the same way. And I've also been trained that I'm supposed to be happy. Normal people are happy, right? But the truth is, most people aren't happy. A lot of people aren't happy every day, all the time. In fact, most people are unhappy at some point every day, all the time. That is a part of being human. And we set up these expectations of whatever it may be, and we get let down by those because we create thoughts in our heads of how things should be. Again, Brene Brown is my favorite when she says, stop shoulding on yourself. We should on ourselves all the time. It should be this way. It should be that way. And then when it doesn't happen, we're left in a pile of shoulds, right? Like of our own disappointment, of our own creation. And it stinks, literally stinks to be in that place. Okay, so the next one, don't expect those techniques to necessarily make you feel good, because these techniques of diffusion don't mean that you're going to feel great. Sometimes acknowledging the thought may mean that it goes away quicker and you're able to focus on other things and not on the thought. Sometimes you have to wrestle with it for a while. You have to struggle. Okay, so disentangle you. The main goal of diffusion is to disentangle you from unhelpful thought processes so that you can focus your attention on more important things. Always remember that you are human. So there will be plenty of times when you're going to forget to use these skills. The goal of this is not for you to get mad at yourself for not doing something the right way. Also just a thought. Yes, also just a thought. Okay, remember that no technique is foolproof. There may be many times when you try them and diffusion doesn't happen. If so, simply observe what it's like to be fused with your thoughts. Observe how it feels to be stuck and feel an ick. Because usually when we can feel our way through things, we can get over them much faster. Okay, so we wanted to, I think, is that pretty much it from those 3 chapters? We want to kind of chat about real quick, maybe our wins and then maybe some of the homework assignment stuff. Like what you guys, yeah, so maybe we'll just maybe we can wrap it up with telling us a win, whether I would love to hear about the wins or the things you learned, your aha moments from the questions that you answered, from the quizzes, 15 through 18, controlling your thoughts and feelings. And then I would love to hear like your cost of avoidance. If some of you guys want to talk about some of the ways that you've seen yourself lose out because you were trying to avoid thoughts and feelings, or just general wins, things that you learned. Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand, I think, in the chat, and then we can unmute you. So who's first? Don't be shy.
I can't see the chat.
Hey, all, this is Katie. I'll go.
Hey, Katie.
Hey, Katie.
Hey, I really am digging this. I think it's called experiential avoidance. I do that through most of my life. So I think now I'll just ask myself what I'm avoiding, why I'm avoiding it. And then I might choose to avoid it. It might be something I just don't value that much, that maybe isn't in line with my values. And let that go then, but quit wasting energy feeling guilty about it, right? I thought if you're a parent, I really liked, and I'm using it on my iPad, but I have page 23, but it talks about we tell our children just to not cry, to stop feeling sorry for yourself. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if that stood out for anyone else. But we're going to have bad feelings, just like our kids have bad feelings every day. So we shouldn't expect so much from them, and we shouldn't expect so much from ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So
teaching them early on to just be like, I understand that must make you feel really sad, or that must be really frustrating for you. Now what are we going to do? Yeah, that's really good, Katie.
So that's what stood out to me.
Good. That's good stuff.
I also love that when you talked about like stuff that you maybe have been avoiding, but maybe it's because it didn't line up with your values. That's huge. That's huge, because there's so much stuff that we probably feel guilty about. And when we really, really, really know our values and we're self-aware, we're able to say, you know what? I'm avoiding that because it doesn't line up. And so I need to give myself permission to stop feeling guilty. Just because Susie down the street does it, or you know what I'm saying? Like that's going to be super helpful for me when I have that mastered.
Brene Brown says, the people whose opinions you truly care about should fit on a 1-by-1 piece of paper. Like 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper are the people whose opinions truly matter to you. I find myself getting wrapped up in the opinions of many, many, many people. And it's not helpful to me, and it's not in alignment with my values. So I don't know if that's what Katie was saying specifically, but for me, I spend a lot of time there avoiding things because of the massive list I allow for myself.
Same. I even had a situation come up a couple of months ago where on my tiny sheet of paper, one person on there had an opinion, and it stung and it bothered me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized it's because it didn't line up with my values. But they're one of my people, and it threw me out of whack. And then I got a lot of spiritual direction from Renee Fouts from the Cedar Rock Ministries, and that was life changing to me. And this stuff right here is so much of what they do. So much of what they do.
That's great. What else, guys? I know you guys are just bursting with thoughts. I'm having the thought that you're bursting with thoughts.
Do you want to tell them, for people that hop off, what we're reading next?
Oh, yeah.
Just so.
Well, if I can find where I wrote it down. Okay, so for the 7 through 18. It sounds like a lot, but those chapters are really short. So we're gonna go through 7 through 18 for next time.
And I was kind of overwhelmed whenever I found out we were doing first part through 6, but that really wasn't bad at all to me, the reading it.
Yeah. So what has been a cost of avoidance for you? Maybe asking a more specific question. The control of your thoughts and feelings. It's interesting. I'm reading another book. The foreword in the book was by Steve Hayes, Dr. Steve Hayes. He's actually the creator of ACT, and he has a brand new book out. It's called A Liberated Mind, and I'm like reading them side by side and truly geeking out over all this stuff. And he calls the controlling your thoughts and feelings, the dictator within your mind. The dictator within causes us to run from or control at all costs. What are the costs to you? It will be really interesting for you to be able to look back, not for me, not for anybody else, but for you to be able to take this quiz at the beginning and then for you to take it at the end to see how maybe your thoughts have shifted. Or so that is more of a tool for you, again, putting the book actually into practice in your life. So was anyone kind of like shocked maybe to see that you had a lot of control issues? What?
She's raising her hand like.
Nicole, I see your little hand. Oh.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, no, please. All the time.
Yeah, just on like what's the cost of avoiding. I just realized it's relationships. I had a really, it's like everything steamrolls, like Preston Pugmire, intentional, consistent, like Jessica Heffley's training things and talking with her and, thinking about like scarcity and abundance mindset. And really was in this place of trying to embrace this in a time sense. Like I'm not, having abundance of time and abundance of finances, but really being challenged and realizing I've been avoiding hard things in my personal life and my business life because I've been scared that people would leave and scared that people would abandon. I'm a type 4 on the Enneagram. So like abandon is such a trigger for me. Just afraid that like, oh, they're going to leave. And what's that going to say about me? That's going to say, I'm not good. I'm not worthy, all of these things. And so just realizing that like, oh my gosh, I have been missing out on like true and deep and real, like just love and acceptance in all of my aspects of relationships because I've been afraid of that, like, rejection or that just whatever. So I think that was a really big and seeing how this kind of ties in there, like, okay, that is not, and that is very much not in line with my value of wholeheartedness. So like, woo, okay. And why there's such a tension there for me and has been. So I'm excited to see how that just like continues to unfold.
That's good. That's really good. Good stuff, guys. I fully intend to stay on here until at least 9 o'clock. So you guys just feel free to chime in. Talk to me. Are you liking the book? Are there things you're struggling with about the book? Come on, guys, don't be shy. By the way, I will just also say I'm really excited about the fact that there are so many different people on this call from so many different teams because we have so much perspective to gain from learning from different people in different wheelhouses, and I love that part. So I'm really excited you guys are on.
Yeah, that's why Sunny and I team up because we're so different. We have such different, perspectives on things. She couldn't wait to dive in, and I was like in avoidance mode. Oh, good, look, someone's raising their hand.
Ashley. You go, girl.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to just say thank you guys for doing this book. I've never even heard of it before. And to be all honest, I was pushing it on my team the last couple of weeks and hadn't sat down and got my copy, and I went to get it on Audible today to try to cram it in and realize, oh, it's not on Audible. And I had to even fight thoughts of like, oh, what a great leader you are. You know, you wait till today to get your book, and now you can't even get a copy of it. But I went ahead and watched the video you did earlier, and I'm really excited to get it in my hand and read when I can. As a homeschooling mom of 6, reading my own stuff is not always easy, but I'm really excited. So I just want to say thank you. And just the videos alone, I'm just excited. So thank you so much.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm also really glad to hear you paying attention to the thought that you were having about what it means to be a leader. Just simply a thought. I also selfishly really wished that this book was on Audible because I'm a big Audible fan. Actually, I love to Audible while reading on paper so that I can underline all the things. And I can also listen at like 2.5 or 3 times speed if I have the book in front of me. It's the best. The best. But alas, this one isn't. But if you're interested, A Liberated Mind is on Audible. If you have credits you need to use up.
I think that a lot of Jules are doing that while we're in Hawaii. Because you talked
really?
about it.
A Liberated Mind?
I think a lot of them are.
Cool.
I mean, in that thread, you know, because you were talking about it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read off some of these 6 pivots that Dr. Hayes talks about in this book, and because I think they're really good. And Ryan, keep watching for hands raised, okay? Because I really do want you guys to still talk, but I'm going to take these last few minutes to read through these instead of just sitting in silence. Okay, so A Liberated Mind, he gives us 6 pivots that we're working toward, and I love the fact that he calls them pivots, and because a pivot just means moving from being inflexible to flexible, which is what we're trying to do throughout this entire book and this entire study. And he says, 1, see our thoughts with enough distance that we can choose what we do next, regardless of our mind's chatter. So just keeping enough distance to be able to choose. 2, notice the story that we've constructed of ourselves and gain perspective about who we are. 3, allowing ourselves to feel even when the feelings are painful or create a sense of vulnerability. 4, direct attention to an intentional way rather than by mere habit. So noticing what is present here and now inside us and outside of us. And I'm really excited to get to that part of this study because it's super eye-opening when we really dial in and figure out what is going on. Because we don't do that. We don't even breathe deeply throughout the day, much less actually paying attention to what's going on inside and outside. Okay, and then 5 is choose the qualities of being and doing that we want to evolve toward. And then 6 is create habits that support these choices. Just small pivots that move us into a direction of our values. I love it. I think it's super valuable.
Where were those at on the book?
Sorry. They're not in this book. I just wrote them in this book from A Liberated Mind. This book.
Will you say those again, like into voice, and I'll make a graphic or like a post tomorrow?
I can send you a picture of the book.
Sweet.
Cool. Yes. Anything else, guys? Okay. If there is nothing else, I figured there are 2 pages of you guys, so I need to be checking the other page. You guys have all turned your... Who is this?
What?
Who's
Me?
talking?
Me. So remember, 7 through 18th, the 7th through the 18th, on the 10th, Sunny will be here. It's gonna be great.
Yes. And guys, that means Ryan will not be on with me to converse back and forth. So I desperately need you to converse with me back and forth, or it's going to be super boring. Okay? All right. And I don't want to just sit here and talk to you guys. I want it to be interactive. So keep that in mind for next time. Thank you guys so much for being on. I really value you guys being here and learning from this. Oh, I'm seeing your chat now. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.